How's everybody doing tonight? Awesome. So I own Buds and Blossoms, which is a cannabis floral design company, and that segued into CannabisConciergeEvents because I realized not many venues or vendors wanted to work with us little dirty dopers. So I started to try to find the right venues that would be accepting of our industry, and I found the right vendors that would be accepting of the industry, and started to create teams to be able to host the right events, the perfect weddings for the right couples. Then it segued into the Cannabis Wedding Expo. I hosted the world's first Cannabis Wedding Expo in January, and it was a huge success, and it was wonderful just to see how many people came together for a common cause, and to really let this be known that it's no longer a trend, but it really is turning into a tradition these days. I actually have experience in the catering and concierge world as well prior to my cannabis world. I got involved with catering when I was 16 and did it all through college, worked at a 5-star, 5-diamond resort, a little bit of everything in the hospitality world, and it all just led me into this awesome industry. When it comes to working with cannabis clients, it's very, very important you know who you're working with. You know, if you're dealing with a tourist, are they an enthusiast who's all about the cannabis from another location? Or are they the type of tourist where it's, well, when in Rome, I'm gonna do that? You know, you need to kind of know what you're looking for. You also need to know if it's a tourist versus somebody who already works in the industry. If it's somebody who works in the industry, their tolerance is gonna be higher. They can drink that glass of wine and they can smoke that joint and they'll eat that goodie too. But not every tourist is capable of that. So having the knowledge of who you're actually dealing with is incredibly important on how you're gonna handle the right customers. Then it goes from also the millennials. They'll say game on to anything. They will try that 6-foot bong if somebody else holds it and lights it for them. Whereas, you know, grandma, she might try it only at the end because she's like, you know what? Guess what? YOLO. That's something that millennials know. You only live once, right? So it's, you know, it can go either way, and everybody in between. You know, she might have been a flower child in her previous years, but you don't know until you offer it to her. So, but also keeping things discreet for non-being offensive is very important as well, because if there's some people or half the group that might be offended, then you can keep it in a tasteful little area and vaporize only, so not everybody's seeing the cloud of smoke or smelling the stench. There's ways to have your cannabis incorporated in very classy ways that you don't have to offend anybody in the group. But also, if you don't allow it, it's part of our culture, we're gonna do it anyways. We're gonna go out to the car during the wedding or after the wedding's over, take a puff and come back in. I guarantee there's bartenders or caterers in here who have smelt that guy and been like, oh my God, what's up? Well, wouldn't it be nice to know what he smoked so you could kind of know what the reaction is going to be? Is that person gonna be giggly later, or are they gonna be hovering over the dessert table and you have to like bring out extra desserts because he's like chowing down? Or is he gonna be the guy who goes and sits on the couch and falls asleep? Kind of knowing what opportunity or what strain somebody is smoking can give you more insight on how to handle your customers and give a better customer experience. A couple things about alcohol versus cannabis, very important, is I would not ever really force people to choose alcohol versus cannabis and say you can only have one or the other. Chances are not everybody's gonna do both, and chances are you're gonna upset one person or the other, whichever way you choose. So learning the right way to include it, where it's tasteful, it's in moderation, it's in discretion and appropriate dosing for the client is very, very essential. Then also knowing, most people know what their tolerance is. You know, if they've tried cannabis before and they feel comfortable having that glass of wine with that joint, trust them. But if it is somebody who is a first timer, they're new to the state, they're new to cannabis, educate them. Give them the opportunity to say, this is gonna make you feel this way. Because each strain does have specific side effects that you can count on, that you know are more typical than, I'm gonna pick on you. Are you a tequila girl who your clothes fall off? Maybe, all right. And are you a whiskey man who's gonna go get in a fight with your neighbor? Maybe. Well, you know what? With alcohol, it's kind of tough to judge if that would really be your true personalities and how they would come out with specific alcohol and specific types of liquor. So it's difficult to say that when I take this puff, my eyes are gonna go green and I'm gonna start pulsating and turn into the Incredible Hulk and go eat somebody's face. That's ridiculous. So take that into consideration, that not everybody who drinks tequila is gonna turn into a showgirl. Not everybody who drinks whiskey is gonna turn into Mike Tyson. And the rest of us who are taking a puff aren't gonna turn into zombies. Let's be realistic about it. Also, there are some strains that are higher potency here in Colorado. In Colorado, we fight for that high potency. We want that high potency. A lot of people coming from different areas may not be used to that high potency of cannabis, so they're not prepared for that one hitter quitter that they really should only take one hit on, because at home they might be able to take 3 or 4. Education is key again. So just really helping people know that. Then also there's different ways that you can have it. You can allow people to smoke, which allows for that immediate onset. Typically starts to leave the person in heavy feeling within 2 hours. But if you give somebody an edible, for instance, it might not kick in for 2 hours. So knowing if you want to give them something that gives them an instantaneous high versus a tincture that takes about 10 minutes to kick in, and it will slowly kind of phase out, just how it phased in. There's different ways that you can allow people to enjoy it, and just really knowing the right way to serve it as well. Moderation is key. At all of my events, I give essentially like a drink ticket. It's called a token. And I give them a token, and that is how many edibles they're allowed to have. And truly, it's my way that it helps with moderation. And also just paying attention that I checked their ID, so they have this, or they have a wristband because they had their ID checked. Knowing who you're Just going back to knowing who your clients are is key. Is it a 21 and up event? No, there's little Johnny running around? Well, make sure Uncle Sam isn't passing it to little Johnny. Keep an eye on those things, or only allow cannabis at events that are 21 and up. You might lose some business because, they do want little cousin Johnny there, or you could learn to be flexible and say, all right, maybe after 10 o'clock, things can change a little bit. Just thinking about the different ways, because everybody is going to react differently, but say that they start to overindulge. If they start to feel too high, give them some calming tea, give them some chamomile tea, start to bring them back down and feel grounded again. Give them plenty of water. If somebody's feeling like they're too couch locked, give them some coffee, get them up and moving, have them dance a little bit, and I guarantee they're gonna snap out of the feeling of uncomfort, or you gotta sit there and kind of coach them up a little bit. Dude, it's only gonna last a couple hours, you're gonna be fine. And there's also even a product out on the market called a rescue tonic. And it's a little beverage that you drink, it's all natural. You drink it down, and next thing you know, your high basically dissipates. That's always something good to have in a little rescue kit. Some things to think about too is when it comes to overconsumption, there's many, many factors that can go into overconsumption. Is it the altitude? Look at how high we physically are here. Then look at dehydration because of altitude. Are they eating or smoking or ingesting on an empty stomach? Heck yeah, it's gonna hit you faster and harder, especially if you're not ready for it. And then also, when you're going to a wedding, you might have just gotten off the plane, you partied all night, you're partying all morning, and you're partying into the wedding. Sleep deprivation, come on. So a combination of these things can be potentially dangerous. Is it fair to say it was the cannabis that made her go crazy? Or it's the cannabis that made her puke? No, that's not fair, because especially here in Colorado, there's a lot of factors that can play into somebody over-consuming. So knowing how to handle it when people over-consume is very important as well. I feel that the solutions are truly educating yourself, educating your staff, and then also educating your customers, because you might be the first contact line in Colorado that somebody from Florida is calling and saying, I want my wedding in Colorado. Tell me about it. Tell me what's good. These are my people. They've never tried it before. What are your suggestions? And having the right answers to be able to tell them is very, very important. Then also, hire help. There are companies out there like myself, or there are what we call bud tending companies, where they literally show up with a bar just like the bar, but they have all these different smokes and all these different edibles, and they can really educate people about it. And that is so important, because back to education, you don't want somebody to get in a bad spot because they weren't well informed. So that's really the big deal. When it comes to legality side of things, you have to remember that Amendment 64 allowed us to be able to gift up to 1 ounce of cannabis to any adult over the age of 21. So what that means is when you go to a wedding and somebody gives you a party favor, if that party favor happens to be a little mini liquor bottle or whatever it might be, if they're over 21, it's not an issue. That person's also not paying for that little gift, right? So in the world of cannabis, in weddings and special events, if the items are pre-purchased by the event coordinator or by the couple being wed, then they can technically gift it to anybody over the age of 21 as long as they are not gifting more than 1 ounce to a particular person. But this is where companies like yourselves come involved, or companies like mine, where you would want somebody to administer the cannabis. You wouldn't want it to be a free-for-all, a buffet, load and go. That is trouble. I have been to those events, and it's like, and how much did you really just, oh gosh, you're gonna be feeling good later. You don't want that situation. So really back to moderation and having the right skill set to handle the right situation. My final kind of comments is, don't hurt your business because you're turning away customers who are cannabis friendly. They do it in their daily lives. They want to do it on their big day. Why should they be faltered for that? Try to be flexible with them. Try to see what ways you could safely and legally incorporate it into their big day if that's what they desire. If you don't, they're going to find another catering company that will. That's the way it goes, and you might lose business. You also don't want to hurt your business reputation because you allowed this to happen and then you had somebody overconsume and you didn't know how to handle that. So once again, educate yourself. And then also, you want the customer experience to be the most ideal it can be, because we all know that more business comes out of other people's mouths. It's all word of mouth that is truly the best referral system for different people choosing your business for their special event. So give them a good positive experience, and I guarantee you'll get more business out of it. My biggest question to everybody in the room is, what's your company's cannabis policy? If you don't have one, I'm here to help. I can help you write one, I can consult with you, and I can teach your staff even more about the different strains. If it's an indica, you're gonna settle down. If it's a sativa, you're gonna be dancing all night long. What do you need from me? And I'm always here to help. So, thanks.
Thank you so much, Bec. Now, information is power. Denver was founded on gold, and we have a new gold and a new opportunity to make money. Hence our hashtag Green Rush Denver. So please, on the online universe, please use that hashtag Green Rush Denver to ask all your questions. At this point, I go back to my colleague back there, Jen, and she's going to go to the audience with any questions that you may have.
Hi everybody, I'm Jen. If you guys have a question, please raise your hand, and this will be streaming live to our broadcast. So right over here, please state your name and then your question.
Hi, my name's Jerry Barnett, and I wonder if you're giving out a token. How do you get a joint for that? Do you get 2 hits at a pipe or a bong, or how do you regulate the quantity? That's my first question.
It all varies, and it'll vary depending on what is being offered at that wedding. A lot of events tend to actually be more what I call BYOC, bring your own cannabis. People, they might not actually offer it, but if you say we're open to it and there's a patio where everybody can go indulge, sometimes that is the safest bet because it really takes it out of the hands of everybody. But under the circumstance with a token, that's all any cannabis that has been pre-purchased. So it might be 1 token for 1 joint or 1 token for a 5 milligram edible. And when it comes to edibles, we would always make sure that you're being guided to have the lower dose and the right serving size for the right person.
And my second question is about edibles. Mm-hmm. I'm a child of the 60s, so not a novice, but prefer alcohol to marijuana. But I have found myself and some others who overdose on edibles because you don't know what's in it. You have no idea. I had a half a cookie and ended up in the hospital. It was right on the cusp of the law coming in like a year and a half ago. And it's like, how could this be happening to me?
And edibles are a very tricky topic. I actually also work for an edible manufacturer here in Denver called Love's Oven. We make cookies and brownies and crackers. And the interesting thing about me working for them part-time is the fact that my first edible experience was horrible. I saw red velvet cupcake and I dug into it. I did not read the label or anything. Next thing you know, I was puking, I fell over, and I thought I was tripping. It was a horrible experience, and I couldn't even stand up off the ground. This is why I go back to education. And now, the way that cannabis is being packaged and presented these days is all in single-serving doses. So now the general public and different people are actually designating what the right dosage is for the average consumer. So for special events, I like to take that dosage even lower. They typically say 10 milligrams is okay. Well, I can puff tough, but when it comes to an edible, 10 milligrams does me in, you know, whereas I have friends who can eat a 300 milligram edible and have no problem and still be totally functioning. It's back to knowing who your clients are and having the appropriate dosing for those different folks. Absolutely.
Anyone else have a question? All right over here, just state your name and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Tammy Ferrero. 2 questions. One, you said in the beginning that you had to really find who your clients are. How do you do that? Number 1. Number 2, how do you, on the event side of things, handle risk now adding cannabis to events? So I know for us, for our insurance and that kind of thing, we have a lot of very specific clauses about liquor, which I assume would be similar. How have you found that to be an issue with your insurance company, or what have you had to do to make sure that you're still insured for these kind of events?
So with the risk side of things, a lot of the insurance and a lot of the policy and procedure falls down on the venue itself, because you have to have a privately owned venue, private ownership, and on private property. So if those 3 things are not met, it's never going to be truly a legal situation. So without those, you're kind of in a tough spot. And then finding those types of clients, it's advertising to those niche magazines, it's advertising those niche blogs and catalogs and all of those different things. Having the opportunity to speak at events like this where you're educating people who might not be the outright smoker. I'm sure there's a little closet smoker hiding in here somewhere. But, you know, being aware that there are people who are at least open to it and having the guts to have the conversation would amaze you at who might come out of the woodwork.
Awesome. Okay, does anyone else have another question before I pass it back to Ben? No? All right, Ben. Oh, we do have one more. All right, just state your name and your question, please.
Hi, my name's Maddie, and I'm just curious, like, could you paint a small picture for me at, like, a wedding where, say, maybe you have a couple who is not necessarily, like, cannabis enthusiasts, but you know you have people coming from out of town who might be excited about it. Like, how do you navigate a crowd that maybe has some openness to it and some people who might be against it? Like, what are your policies? How do you share? You mentioned earlier about, like, kind of having a secret area, but are you more open about it, and how do you educate the entire group?
It comes down to a matter of the couple or the event coordinator's decisions about how open they want to be about it. If they want to be public and loud and proud, as I say, then you know what, you can have the vaporizing bar and people will be like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's that. And they might walk away. Or they might be curious and go over and check it out and see what's going on. On some venues, they simply don't even want it indoors. So you might have a complete separate patio. You might have a separate bus that is parked outside to serve as a private smoking lounge. So people, even when they step outside, they don't even smell it. So there's ways just to go back to that discretion factor. But a loud and proud wedding might have an ice bong that's this tall. They might have edibles. They might have a joint bar. They might have a little bit of everything. Or it could be the bride who is still an enthusiast and her dress is made of hemp. Her linens are hemp linens. There's cannabis worked into the bouquets in different ways. There are so many different ways, even a chapstick as party favor. Not everything has to be blunt and brutal and in your face and rude per se. There are ways to be very tasty and classful about it. So it really, really depends on the client and what feel they're really looking for. And if they have some guests who are interested in it and they don't want it necessarily at their wedding day, then they could still set up for a dispensary tour with somebody like Goldie's business. And they all could go on a dispensary tour as a rehearsal dinner party, and go hang out, go check out the scene and what's going on. There are ways to still incorporate it into the festivities, maybe not necessarily into the event as well, depending on their preference. You're welcome.
A couple questions. questions from our social media universe. I just want to say I'd love to get the screen names if they come in. I would love to see what they say. All right, our first question. This one's for Bec, of course, because you're the only one up there right now. I'm glad we were specific on that. Thank you. How would you recommend we educate attendees about what to expect if they try an edible at an event? This is from Rebecca Abram.
So education about edible consumption comes down to the knowledge of what strain the edible was made with, knowing what the side effects of that strain may be. Is it up? Is it down? Is it somewhere in the middle? Also being aware of what that dosing is. And also, is the edible a tincture? Are you putting it underneath your tongue, getting it sublingual so it hits you faster but dissipates faster? Or are you actually nibbling on a cookie that takes time to go through your digestive process and takes time to actually catch up with you? Depends on what you might want to choose on what you're going to serve at your event. If you're looking for immediate sensation, having the straight bud is always the most ideal, because the faster the onset, typically the faster it leaves your body. That's always something to keep in mind. With edibles, a true edible, when you ingest it, it's typically going to take longer for it to digest, and then it's also going to take longer for it to get out of your system. So knowing, again, what crowd, how long, what's the ambience, what's the atmosphere, are we partying until 4 in the morning, all depends on how you're going to do it.
Awesome. Really quick, can we give one more big round of applause for Bec up here?